Okay, Mike Baggetta here, Dennis Young, Primitive Substance Podcast. Mike, all the way from Gainesville, Florida, electric guitarist, number of really good records, and we'll talk about the new record and your tour coming up. So, Mike, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Dennis. Appreciate
Sure.
you.
So, talk about your early days of growing up and getting interested in playing music.
Yeah, sorry, I got a cough drop in here. I got a little throat
That's
thing
a,
going on. Um, my dad plays guitar, so that's kind of guitar-wise, that's the easiest thing to start with, just growing up and hearing him playing guitar around the house and just being interested in how he could make all these sounds come out of this thing, like spooky, scary sounds, which I later learned were of minor chords, or like happy sounds, which I later learned were
right.
major chords.
That's
Um,
funny.
yeah, and just watching him play, it was just really like kind of my small brain couldn't understand how all this, kind of emotional material was coming out of a speaker, like how I could feel things from it that were not being described in words. And so
Hmm.
that was sort of a feeling that I took with me for a long time. To this day, the most important qualities in music are like the emotional, mysterious qualities, the things that are, really speak to me. But
And
so,
it's
anyways,
amazing.
yeah,
And
go
it's
ahead.
amazing. Like six strings can do that, and plus amplified and then add effects. It's a very mysterious instrument when you use it right.
Yeah, music in general. I mean, when you think
Mm.
about, if you're even just going to talk about Western music and tonality, I mean, there's just limitless things you can do with a very finite amount of material. It's like letters and the great works of literature. There's only 26 letters in the alphabet.
That's right. Now,
Um,
who are you influenced by? What musicians, uh, as you started to play guitar, were there any particular guitarists that stand out?
yeah, for sure. Actually, one of the first ones was Jeff Beck.
Mm.
Just talking about the auction there. Uh,
Right.
yeah, my dad had a copy of Wired, the Jeff Beck record.
Oh, great record.
Yeah, and I found that in the basement and put it on the record player. The cover is so cool looking. I was like, "What's this sound like?" And I put it on, and talking about that emotional, mysterious quality of music. How was he making the guitar do these things? Which I later learned with the tremolo bar and all this stuff. But like, man, how is he talking through the instrument so fully? I couldn't
Mm.
really understand that. But another thing about that record that was important is that on the back of the record it lists the songs and the composers. And this is again like early life. I didn't know
Right.
people don't write their own songs. I just figured you make a record, your name's on the record. Obviously, all the songs are yours, right? Well,
Right.
so
Right.
and on that record, he recorded a Charles Mingus song called "Goodbye Pork Pie Hat," which is written for Lester Young by Charles Mingus. Who's this Charles Mingus guy? So I go to the record store, I find a Mingus record. I read those liner notes. I go back. I find a Miles Davis record. I get a late Coltrane record. And then
Mm.
at that point, all this amazing music has come out for me. And then my sister, while I was in high
Mm.
school, somehow she finds at a record store for a Christmas gift one year, she gets me the David Torn album called "What Means Solid Traveler." And there's another
Oh,
album
that's a
that
great
just,
record he does.
oh man, so
And
total touchstone. And then later in college, a friend of mine gave me another record that was really important to me, Mike Watt's record called "Contemplating the Engine Room" with Stephen Hodges and our buddy Nels Cline on guitar. My cat's up here causing all kinds of mayhem.
I have a cat over here too, trying to get in front of me. It's like,
You're about to hear a
get
bunch of
away.
stuff fall on the ground. But so, between Jeff Beck and late period Coltrane and Charles Mingus and David Torn and Mike Watt and Nels Cline and George Harrison and Bob Dylan and Neil Young, that's a pretty good place to start, I think.
That is. Yeah, and you got you sound. I mean, you have a lot of. I hear a lot of influences. Plus, I hear a lot of different styles listening to your music. Like Canto was very experimental.
Mm,
Uh, the 2010 recording, right? Is that when it was done?
that was the first recording I ever made. It would have been earlier than
Hmm.
that. I think it was 2003, but it was
Okay.
put out on a small sort of CDR
Oh, okay.
label that was now kind of out of business. So I think it got reissued in 2010. But that is a solo recording of all prepared guitar etudes. So I'm attaching all kinds of material to the strings in the spirit of John Cage's prepared piano. And at that time, I was listening to a lot of sort of textural improvised music. Derek Bailey was a big influence.
Oh, yeah. Okay, he's great. Fred Frith, I was going to mention.
Yeah. You know, the longer I kind of do this, the more I realize like what is true is that people that are really in it for the music, they're not concerned about the constraints of like genre at all. You know, they're not concerned about what kind of music they're perceived as playing. And in fact, we all listen to all kinds of music throughout our lives, you know. So if the goal is to make an honest individual music that no one else can make, which is kind of my goal in a way, it just makes sense that everything you hear is going to come out filtered through your own personal aesthetic. And I don't want there to be any boundaries. I don't want to be any fences in the way. That's not how I live my life. It's not how I listen. I don't think it's how anybody else listens. We know the idea of categorization is like one of commercial means for the most part. So
but I hear that in your music. I mean, every record sounds a little different, which I really like. I mean, you have a whole
well, that's cool to hear. Yeah, thanks for noticing.
That's what I heard. I listened to it on Bandcamp, and everyone had a little different sound. I wanted to talk about the Wall of Flowers record, how you got Jim Keltner involved and David Thorne. I mean, you got some real heavyweights there.
Yeah, that I know, you pinched me. Yeah. Well, that record is me and Mike Watt and Jim Keltner, and the way David Thorne mastered it, of course, made it sound incredible with his ear. But my friend Chris Schlarb, who is a great musician in his own right, and he runs a studio down in Long Beach, California, called Big Ego, and he has the record label of the same name.
Right. Okay.
He was starting that studio in 2017, I think, and was going to start the label. And I'd known him kind of peripherally through some friends for a number of years. And he had written to me. I'm about to knock the computer off.
That's all right. Oh, there it is.
And he had written to me kind of asking, like, would you be into doing something for my label? And I was recording for another label in Barcelona at the time called Fresh Sound New Talent. And Jordy Pujol at that label, he'd kind of given me my first chance at making my own records under my own name with my own music, who I'm forever indebted to. But I had a feeling if I was going to go to Chris's label, maybe that would end the relationship with Jordy's label. So I thought, well, it could be interesting if I can do something that I can't do any other way. And so I told Chris, yeah, I would like to do it, but I only want to do it if I can try this kind of crazy idea. I had never had a band. I had never made a recording with people that I wasn't friends with. I'd never made a recording just cold calling people I didn't know. I don't really like the name game thing on the records and stuff.
Right.
A lot of times that yields a sound that's not too exciting for me. A lot of times you see a record that has like, oh, all these people playing together for the first time. It must be amazing. And you hear it and it's kind of like, yeah, it's all right. And I never wanted to make that record, but I did have an idea that it could be fun to try something really, some interesting new kind of music with people who have never met before.
Oh.
And he said, okay, well, who do you want to do it with? And I said, well, I think it's weird that Mike Watt and Jim Keltner have never played together before, because I hear this similar quality in the way they approach music, I think, and it would be fun to try that out. And you know, we laughed and laughed. Like, of course, that's never going to happen.
Yeah, right. Jim Keltner, right?
Right. Yeah, it just seemed like kind of a funny thing. But I was serious about it. And so we kept talking about it. 6-8 months later, we said, well, maybe we can actually try to figure out how to make this happen. And so Chris made a bunch of phone calls, and he got back to me. He's like, here's the date. Here's the only date that everyone can do it at the same time. And I was like, okay, great.
Wow.
So we got out there, and none of us had ever met. I'd never met Watt. Watt had never met Jim. Jim had never met me. So we all met in the studio. We had one day.
Oh, wow. That's great.
I brought a bunch of music, and then we also improvised for 3 or 4 hours. And at the end of it, it was kind of a whirlwind. Everybody was so chill, and it was an awesome day. And I got all this improvised music, and I went home and I started chopping it up and rewriting new material to what I had to create kind of new songs that were coming out of the stuff we improvised together. So yeah, that record was really fun. And it kind of proved a point to me, was that if you just get people together that are really just into the music, you can get a lot done, and you can get some stuff made that couldn't get made any other way.
Well, I like this song, I Am Not a Data Point. That's really good. I mean, it's got a lot of, I don't know, really improv on it. Like,
that's one of the ones that was totally improvised in the studio. And
I could tell.
Yeah, and then to kind of lock it in, there's all these guitar parts that get layered afterwards. So a lot of the improvised stuff that I was going to use for the record, I actually went and I transcribed Watt's bass part, and then I transcribed a lot of what Jim was playing on the drums rhythmically. And I kind of used all that material to compose new guitar parts to come over. So it's not like total improv. You do hear this stuff that's composed. I love that mysterious quality of some music where you can't tell, is it composed or is it improvised, or is this a dream or is this reality? I really like that sort of liminal space, I guess could be a word for it. So trying to create that in music is a fun challenge for me.
Well, sometimes that's a chancy thing, bringing people together that you don't know. You know what they can play, but it was great that it all worked out. I mean, I know Jim Keltner. Everybody who knows music knows him. And Mike, I don't know too much about Mike's music, his playing, but what is it? He's been around a while, Mike. What with jazz?
Watt is a great hero for many. He started out with a band called the Minutemen.
Oh yeah, now I know him. Right,
his friends from high school.
Okay,
and then he went on to have a band called Fire Hose, and then he went on to play 125 months with the Stooges.
Oh my gosh, I didn't realize that.
And then he's got two great bands of his own, Missing Men, Second Men.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, and he's still playing as much as anybody today. And creatively too, he doesn't go back and relive the past. I mean, he just thinks about the next project. And I'm always excited to hear like the next thing that he does, because I know it's going to be different than something before. He doesn't do greatest hits, and that's one of the things I love.
And you're playing with him now, right? For the tours that you're doing?
He's in my band MSSV. Yeah. So
yeah, we'll talk about that now. I mean, you did Live Flowers, right? That was a live recording.
Yeah, that recording is the first MSSV recording. When Wall of Flowers came out, I wanted to do some shows, but Jim wasn't really traveling at that time. So I asked Watt, maybe I could ask this guy, Stephen Hodges. I know you've worked with him. He's on your Contemplating the Engine Room record, which is a big deal for me. And I thought it would be kind of trippy if he would do it. So Watt gave me his number, and I asked Hodge, and he was into trying to do some shows. So that first tour was 10 shows in 10 days, coast to coast.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, we covered some miles in that one. And then about halfway through, I was thinking like, Hodge, of course, Hodges plays so different than Keltner. He's a different person. Duh. And so I thought it would be fun to write music for this group of three people, because it's a different sound. And both those guys were on board with it. And Watt came up with a band name, and here we are. I
know, you guys sounded really, really tight. I mean, and it looks like you guys are having fun on stage. I saw some of the YouTube clips. And
it's a blast playing with those guys. People sometimes will ask what it's like to play with Watt and Hodges in that band. And my response has always been like to imagine like jumping on top of a runaway train and like holding on until the train comes into the station. It's a total blast. Yeah.
I imagine. Now, you also did a record, Everywhere We Go. Was that with Jim Keltner too?
When We Go.
Everywhere We Go. Okay.
And that's the second one that me and Watt did with Jim. Yeah, we did that I think in 2022.
So did that feel more comfortable when you did that one, as far as you guys knew your space to play? And
that was interesting because I had a lot of improvised music left over from the Wall of Flowers session, and I had started to make a second record from all that material, where I was chopping it up and composing stuff over it, and it's good, and it's here. It hasn't come out. No one's heard it, but we sent it to Jim to check out, and he said, this is great, but if you want to make another record, why don't we just get together and make another record? And so I said, well, yeah, if you're into that, let's just do that instead. So that's what we did. So I had a few more written songs this time, though we did still do some improvised stuff on it. But the second record, Everywhere We Go, definitely has more like composed songs, but there is a lot of like improvised elements throughout as well.
It has kind of like an Americana feel to it on a few of the songs. That's the impression I got. I mean, it's got still experimental, but do you think it has that feel to you?
Well, it's hard to say because, like I said before, I listen to so many things.
Mm,
I'm not setting out to have something that has a sound except my own sound or the sound of the band playing together.
right.
I mean, I love a lot of country music. I like some of those bands. I live in America for better or worse, so I mean, it's bound to happen, I guess. A
Yeah,
lot of
that's
people will
true.
compare that first the title track to like a spacing on the name, like a spaghetti western guy, composer. What's his name?
It does have that feel, that first song.
Morricone.
Oh yeah,
Which
I
is
did
funny
think of that.
because yeah, that's Western movie music, but it's written by an Italian guy.
Oh, isn't that
I
something?
thought it
I
was
didn't
always.
realize
I
that.
didn't know all those Clint Eastwood movies were shot over in Italy. You know, they're like made to look like the
Oh,
Wild West, but all the spaghetti western stuff they could shoot them in Italy because the mountain ranges looked so desert-like up in the north. I think it was.
oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, if you go back and watch all
Ah,
those, the Man with No Name movies, A Fistful of Dollars, all the landscapes are Italian, and it's all Italian.
ah,
Crew,
see that I didn't know.
Morricone's the Italian composer, but it has such an influence on American culture. So
Hmm.
it's just another little example in my mind about how all these sort of like genres and things, they don't really add up the way we think.
Now, what do your songs start from? Do you write them at home and then you bring them to the band, or is this a team effort when you're doing a record?
Well, it is a team effort because I want all their input. I know that anything that those guys bring to the table to change a song that I bring in, most likely 100% is going to be better than anything I'm going to come up with on my own.
Hmm.
When you have guys that are like so into music like that and
Oh
have been doing
yeah.
it for so long, the idea that you could have an idea that's going to be better than a group effort like that, I think it's insane to think that. So I definitely welcome input. And one of the things we do in MSSV is we'll record the albums right after the tour ends, like the next day after the last
Now
gig.
that makes sense. You're still
Yes.
excited for the show. You feel it. So the
Yeah.
music is fresh. It's
When I
fresh. You're
was
playing it's fresh.
when I was younger and I was living in New York City for a while, I got to be a part of a lot of really interesting music, and people would write all this music and beautiful stuff, and you'd rehearse it for like a week or two, and then you'd make the record. Sounded great. And then a year later, the record would come out, and you'd do like a week or two of shows. So you'd have to relearn all the music. And then at the end of that week of playing the music every night, I would always think, like, man, we should have made the record now. It sounds so different. It sounds like it's
Mm,
evolved kind of naturally, but that just isn't kind of the way it works for a lot of people. And so I always thought, like, man, if I get a chance to make my own record, I'm going to make sure we play some gigs first. And
that's
that's what
smart.
I got to do with the four records I made for Fresh Sound. I always did it that way. And then with MSSV, I'll have music set for the tour. The record comes out, like this new
Right.
one, On and On, is coming out.
Yeah,
So
I'll talk about that.
we'll play the music from On and On this tour, but then I've also got new music written that will work into the set every night. So after 50 shows, we can go right in the studio and record it. And the music evolves again in a way that I can't imagine on my own. There's just no way that you can know what something's going to sound like after you play it 50 times in a row. It's going to change.
Right, right.
Some of the songs on the album, they sound totally different than what I brought in originally before the tour also. I love that. I love that thing. I don't know how
So
it happens.
so you leave a lot of room for improv with your songs. So every night there might be something that comes up that nobody expects, like from you playing or Mike or Stephen. Is
Well,
that how that
there is
works?
some there is some room for that, and I do think that that's really important in music to have that space. But sometimes the things that change are just sort of smaller things like dynamics. Like
Hmm.
a song might get quieter and quieter every night until it kind of reveals something in like its emotional quality that I didn't know was there at the beginning. And then you can kind of mine that for a little bit more and turn it into something else. or it could just be a tempo thing. Or a lot of times what happens with Watt and Hodges is they'll tweak the relationship of the bass and the drums. So it'll make more sense in the way they're working together as one unit for the song in a way that I can't understand as well as them, who've been playing bass and drums for 50 years or whatever, you know. I have an understanding of it, but it's different when you're in that zone all the time. And so I've definitely learned a lot from both of them about the relationship of drums and bass in ways that I've never heard people talk about, really, which is kind of fascinating.
Well, being in the zone, that sometimes depends on the place, the sound, the people there. So it all factors in, and then if you can link up, then it's like the music takes over. You become part of that something else.
Oh,
and
yeah.
That's always a great feeling when that can happen.
Yeah. And even if it doesn't happen, it's kind of fun to try to get there. I think that when it happens at its best, you're not thinking about it. You know,
That's
you're just
true.
sort
You're
of
right.
in
You're
the
just
doing
doing it. You're right. I agree.
The doing it.
I've
Yeah.
been that. I've felt that, and it's
I know.
an amazing feeling.
That's why it's important to me to just kind of keep doing the work, because you can't depend on, oh, I'm going to be in the zone tonight. We don't get to decide that, as you know.
No.
But if you
right.
can just do the work and you can make sure that you're like 100% there for it as best as you can be,
right.
then you can you can be ready for it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You know, if you're not prepared for the moment to come, for me, I feel like I've let down the music. So I have to try to be ready. Whether it comes or not is not up to me, though.
Now, before we talk about the new record, like, what's your guitar setup? I mean, what kind of guitar do you play? What do you have, a big pedal board? Do you?
No, I use a guitar by this guy Saul Cole, Koll. He's out in Portland, Oregon.
Right.
This is the part of the interview where I would like grab it and show it to you, but
okay.
It's on a UPS truck headed to Portland, so he can make a new nut and tweak the pickups for tour coming up and stuff. But that guitar is great. If you go on the internet, you can see it. It's kind of like a black one with a little crazy red pickguard. He's an amazing guitar builder. He plays in bands too forever, so he gets it. And it's just like one of the most incredible instruments I've ever gotten to play. I'm really lucky to play that guitar. One of the best features of it for me is the tremolo bar, because I end up using that a lot for transposing chords and also sort of vocal like quality in my playing. It's just a 2-point Strat trem for the guitarists out there watching. It's nothing fancy, but the guitar is it just plays so well. It makes it really easy to do the things I want to do. So that's the main guitar. My amp is made by Benson Amps, also in Portland, Oregon. My friend Chris Benson runs that company. And the amp I use is called the Vincent. That's a great amp. There's a quick story I can tell about that.
Sure.
I don't know how gear heavy this podcast.
You never know. Well, somebody, there's got to be gearheads out there. Sure.
I try to have my life be not gear heavy, but but there's a funny story. One of the earlier MSSV tours, I cobbled together this amp rig, which when it worked sounded great. It was like a little 1-watt tube amp, but it would go. I would send it into like a bigger, like 50-watt power amp, and then I'd send it to a 2x12. And in the loop between those two amps, I had this little EQ sort of effect that I was using to get a certain EQ quality happening. And then I was tipping the 2x12 cab vertical so I could get a speaker closer to my ear and hear it. And halfway through tour, this thing kind of stopped working. It was something, at first it was something with the cables were kind of getting weird, and it was hard to find cables. So I had sound guys like soldering cables together for me at sound check. And then sometimes one of the amps wouldn't work for whatever reason, and I'd have to borrow Watt's bass amp, his backup amp. So half the shows I was playing with a bass amp, and so I had this like stack of stuff on stage. Anyways, by the time we get around to Portland, Oregon, I've known Chris Benson for a little while, and we're friendly. We've never talked about amps. He's never tried to sell me anything, but he comes to hang out at soundcheck, and I've got my rig on stage, which basically at this point is looking like a science project. You know, it's like the cab's tipped up. I think it's ripped. There's like a stack of like other various amps. Some are not working. There's wires hanging off all over the place.
Oh my gosh.
And after sound check, I'm just sitting outside with Chris just rapping, and he goes, you know what? Everything sounds great, but what is going on with your setup, you know? So I tell him the story I just told you. You know, I'm using this 1 watt amp
Right.
into this power amp, and I'm tipping the cab up, and I got this EQ thing going on in the thing, and he's kind of looking at me, and I finished the story, and he goes, you know, I make an amp that already is that, right?
Oh, got that.
And I go, no. So
Yeah.
this amp, the Vincent, it's his 1 watt amp that gets sort of reamped in his 30 watt amp, and he makes the cab vertical, and he's got the EQ that I was trying to get. It was like exactly what I was looking for, and I was like, this is unbelievable. But it works. And so the amp I have here, another band was out with it, and they were sort of checking it out, and I think they weren't going to take it. So when that tour was over, I went home, and Chris said, look, they're sending this amp back. I can just have them send it to you to check it out, see what you think. And so I got to try it, and right away I was sold. I was like, whoa, this is exactly what I wanted. So it's a big deal when you find stuff that works for you, you know?
Yeah, does he sell these in the stores, or is this just through his company?
Yeah, they're not a big company, but all their stuff's like in Sweetwater and Guitar Center and stuff. You can find Benson amps pretty easy, and they make a bunch of pedals that are real cool. I don't use a lot of effects. It's sometimes I guess it sounds like I do, which is cool, but a lot of that stuff is with touch on the guitar, but there are definitely effects. I just use like a fuzz pedal or two, some kind of filtery things like occasional ring mod or like a phaser, wah pedal, and then I have a little sampler sort of looper randomizer thing. Specifically, this company Red Panda makes a box.
I've heard of them.
Yeah, they make a box called the Tensor, and that I've been using for a really long time for all my sampling and live looping stuff. And then that just goes into a delay. I used to use the old Big Memory Man. And,
I know that.
But Benson Amps makes a great delay, so that's the delay I'm using now too, the Benson delay. And that's it. It's really only like 6 or 7 boxes at the most if you count the tuner and stuff. So it's not a lot. And I don't use a pedal board because I'm a klutz. I can't, no matter how many times I've tried, I can't aim my foot at the button and hit the right thing without falling over on stage. So I have them, and they're spread out really far apart on the floor.
Well, whatever makes you comfortable. I mean, some of those pedal boards, there's some musicians have so much, like the Edge, you know, with U2. I don't know how he does it. He's got he's got more buttons to press than I saw one of his videos with his equipment. It's ridiculous.
You know, some people can handle all that. My brain works best when I'm doing like one thing. Maybe I can do 2 things at a time. But it's just sort of my limitations that I've come to learn. And I do think that limitations can lead to a lot of creative results with having to work what you got. So I've made
it certainly comes through in your music, Mike. You have make so many great sounds and songs. So let's talk about the new record coming out, On and On. It's coming out March 7th, right? 2025. Yes. Yep. And could talk a little bit about that, what the sound's going to be like.
Yeah, well, that record we made at the end of the last MSSV tour, fall 2023, Aki 2023 tour. And we played 58 shows that tour. And then the next day we did the record. And that has 7. So the way this one started, I wrote 7 songs before that tour. And so we learned them during practice, and then we played them every night on tour, off and on. And then at the end, we recorded them. But there's 8 tracks on the record. So one of the things we did in the studio was we did a little improvised song together. We actually improvised for maybe 20 or 30 minutes. And from that, I found this section that could be a great song. So I chopped that out, re-recorded some slide guitar, and wrote some words. And we got that 8th song, which is called On Its Face. If you listen to the vinyl version of the record, the physical copy, you'll see that each side is one complete track. There's no breaks in between the songs. Okay. So we also improvised a lot more material that I turned into these interludes that connect all the tracks so that nothing actually stops throughout the whole record.
That sounds interesting.
Those interludes were recorded by asking Watt and Hodges each separately to sort of improvise solo for half an hour based on themes of the music of the other 7 songs we'd done.
Oh,
So
interesting.
you'll hear remnants of a bass part from some song or remnants of a drum part from some other song, but it's been twisted around in their
Oh, I
mind,
like that.
however they want to improvise it. And I didn't really know what I was going to do with that stuff.
Hmm.
But when the session was done, I took it home and I would just put it on and listen to it, solo Watt playing like the Cline concert on bass, and just sort of trying to check out what was grabbing my ear. And the same thing with the Hodges recordings, and thinking, oh, this part would be cool with that thing he played. And so I started putting them together and piecing them together into songs. And then I'd transcribe that material, the rhythms and the notes, and I'd write guitar parts to go over it as these sort of little interstitial conjoining material to kind of link the songs. The whole idea of the album On and On is kind of my sort of life theory that nothing is actually ending or really too differentiated when you get down to the little pieces that make up life, whatever we want
Yeah.
to call that. Like there's sort of life and death and living and molecules and whatever. There's people, it's not any kind of new theory, but I do sort of ascribe to this thing that everything is interrelated and interconnected. So the album is called On and On. Some of the themes of the songs are about these unending ideas, and so I wanted to find a way to make the music unending too. So it seemed like a way to do that with the physical copy.
And it's going to be on Big Ego, the label.
Big Ego Records. Yep, the same place we've been since the beginning.
And do you distribute it worldwide? Do you distribute it to distributors, or just for mostly live shows you sell it at?
Well, we definitely sell them at live shows. We'll have them on tour, and it's available mostly on Bandcamp, which you can buy from anywhere in the world,
Right.
as far as
Oh
I
yeah, I
understand
know
it.
it.
Distribution is kind of interesting because I don't know how much that matters right now in 2025.
I agree.
So many people do digital, which I have, a lot of love for, and also a lot of like mixed feelings about. Streaming, especially, I have a lot of mixed feelings about. But I do love that anyone can hear the music whenever they want. That's really important.
That is.
But if you have to worry about physical distribution all over the world, it just sort of seems like if somebody wants the record, they can find it and buy
That's
it.
that's true. You're right. That's true. There's no
It ain't
need for
hard,
that. You're right.
We don't make it hard. It's very easy
Right,
to find
right.
it.
Well, I think there's so much music out there. That's the thing, and there's so much variety and so many
Oh
choices
yeah.
for people. How do they find you? Or how, unless you're playing live, you're doing some shows where you become visible. So
Yeah.
the,
Well, what I try to do is just find out ways to get, like talking to you is great, and stuff like that, and just finding
thanks.
other ways to let people know that this music is out there, because there is a lot of great music out there. There's a lot of music in general, which is cool. There's no gatekeeping. People want to start a band and make a
No,
record. Boy, it's so easy to do that. um, but the issue is, like, I just want to have as many people hear it as I can imagine hearing it. So whatever can lead to that, I'm pretty down with.
and you're planning a tour, right? After this in March, I see you're doing a big tour across the country.
Yeah, March
Oh,
13th,
nice.
a week after the album comes out, we'll be doing 52 shows in 52 days in the US. And
Oh my
then
gosh.
right at the end of that, we'll be recording music for the next record. And then we go to the UK and Ireland for 17 shows at the end of May.
Oh, that's going to be great. So
Yeah.
how do you guys do that many shows? I mean, that's got to be exhausting, but I guess, you just learn how to do it, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I know a lot of people look at it and they go like, whoa, this is.
I know. That's what I
But
said.
what I tell everybody is, we're not like on the side of the road digging ditches in the sun for 10 hours a day. Like, we get to play music every night. We get to go to all these different towns and play the music for people. And that's like, we're really lucky to do that. We love doing it. For me, the main thing is just staying healthy and staying
That's
positive
it.
so that I can give the
That's the good.
music 100%. If I'm not
Right.
able to give the music or my bandmates 100%, that's when the fail happens. So getting a lot of rest, eating well. I'm not some like crazy animal on the road. I just try to take care of myself so I can play my best for everybody. We can do it together as a band.
Do you have
And
people helping you on the tour, or are you guys doing this yourself?
we have one helper, and she's great.
Okay.
We wouldn't be able to do a lot of this without her. She handles the merch, and she helps us load in and set up. Yeah, she's awesome. But that's it. It is pretty much just the four of us, the three in the band, and our helper, Miss Dory. So it's self-contained, and the benefit is that we don't have to answer to anybody. I'm the one that books the shows, so if there's some problem with the booking, you can talk to the booking guy right away and complain about it.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, that's it.
And I'm in the van with them, so I'm not trying to do anything stupid that's going to be hard to do. You know, I got to make sure that the drives aren't crazy long. I'm trying to find us new places to play, going back to old places we played, having it make sense, and just get home safe, but still playing our best every night for everybody.
Now, you've played these places before, because sometimes you have issues with people doing the sound that can mess you up. How about the sound engineers at some of these venues?
Well, some of them we've played before, and there's always some new ones. I find for the most part, using sound people at the venue is probably pretty smart, because they work the venue all the time.
Right.
So they know the room a lot better than if you bring in somebody who's never been to that place before, and they got to look around and say, oh, the ceilings are really tall, and what's up with these speakers. The person who works there every night, they already know about the room.
That's true.
This room has a tendency for the bass to fall out in the back, or whatever, you know, like stuff that you can only know from doing it 100 shows a year or whatever in a room. So I kind of think it's really good. I think where the breakdown happens with a lot of people is, unsurprisingly, in communication. So I kind of go in with a little sheet for the sound person.
See, that's smart.
I say, look, here's some things that I know about us. The way we play, sometimes this happens with the kick drum. Sometimes this happens with the tone of my vocal mic, and this is how we want the monitors. And if we can start with that and just do a quick sound check and just get some basic stuff going, that's pretty much all we need. We don't really need to stress about it too much. I trust them, they trust us, mutual respect, and 9 times out of 10, it sounds great.
And you don't have to lug around a PA. That's there, right, at the clubs, right?
Yeah, we're not.
That's a big plus. Yeah. I mean, some of these big bands are bringing PAs along and all types of stuff.
No PAs, no lights.
Oh, there you go. Just pure music. That's what I like to hear. If there's no lights,
we'll play in the dark. That's all right.
There you go. So what's going to be next after? I know I don't want to go that far ahead into the future, but after this, you're going to do something different, or just going to plan on this tour and then
I'm focused on these 69 shows right now.
I'm sure you are. Well, maybe you'll come back on for that if you want to come back on.
Of course, yeah. I know.
I'd love to have you back.
I know that we're going to get through it, and that we'll record the new music. And there is some other stuff for me that's coming out. I have a duo record I made with a great bass player. Well, he doesn't just play bass, named Victor Krause, who's in
I don't know him either.
Nashville. He's played with some amazing people for a long time, but his latest gig was playing guitar with Robert Plant and his sister Allison Krause.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, kind of like
that's pretty heavy. Wow.
On that. But so we have a duo record we made a couple years ago, and it's had like a lot of production difficulties, but I believe it's going to come out later this year. So I'm excited for that, and I'm working on a bunch of solo music that I'm going to start to sort of put together towards the end of this year, early next year also. There's always things coming up.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, let's talk again when this whole tour is over, and I'll try to promote love to promote your music, because it's really great.
Oh man, thank you so much.
And this has been an exciting series, because I've talked to people like you and all different people that make music happen in this world that is so unique.
Well, you help us make it happen, and you make it happen too. So thank you.
I'm trying, and I got more great interviews coming, and I hope to get David Thorne someday. He's promising. I don't want to bug him too much. You know, I've asked him a couple times.
David is one of the most exceptionally interesting and generous and kind and wonderful people I know, let alone his musicianship. He's like,
he's an amazing musician. I mean, he's very, he's a bit underrated. I mean, the people that play music know him, that he's really exceptional. I mean, the general public maybe not as much, but it should be known. He's a legend.
Yeah, he is. He's absolutely one of my favorites, and has meant his music and his kindness has meant a lot to me over the years as well.
So we'll be able to find your music on Bandcamp and on your website, and I'll put it in the link, and it'd be great. Have fun on the tour. Good luck with the record. Everybody out there, subscribe to the channel. We got people like Mike here who come on, and I appreciate your time, Mike, and
Thanks,
good
Dan.
luck with the tour and the record.
Thank you so much.
Anytime.
Appreciate
We'll
you.
talk again soon.
Okay.
Take
thanks.
care.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.